Ladies and gents, welcome back. And Tim and I today are on Savile Row here in London, and we're at Huntsman. And a huge thank you to Huntsman for allowing us to shoot this film here today. If you haven't been in, it's a must-see, it really is. Tim and I are going to briefly cover a few things today in this film. We're going to cover off a book that, you know, it's not every day you get to produce a book, and we had the pleasure of producing this book last year, 2025, 45 years of independent watchmaking for Andersen Genève. So we're going to talk about some of the behind the scenes, some of the insights, some of our favourite and most memorable moments of the production of this book. Sort of trying to preempt maybe some of the questions that we've received over the last few months since the book made its way into collectors' hands. And before we do that, we just thought it'd be helpful to do a little introduction maybe to the both of us, for those out there who aren't familiar with us, and you'd be forgiven for not being familiar with us. But go on, Tim, give us a quick brief. For those who don't know, what is it you do, and how long have you been doing it for?
A long time, almost 20 years now in the watch world, but not very visible on the YouTubes and things like that, so you may well not know. But yeah, I used to be editor of QP magazine, British watch magazine, and then I was watch editor at the Telegraph, and I've been freelance for the last few years, and got to know Andersen Genève probably about a decade ago, when, I think around the same time as you, when they came to exhibit at Salon QP in London, which was a show that I used to be involved in putting on when I was editor of QP magazine. And I think at that moment sort of started realizing that this brand was a little bit special.
It's funny because I can remember vividly that QP experience just for so many different reasons for me. But it was actually Pierre Alexandre, who's the CEO and has been since 2015, who I remember showing me the Tempus, and he just opened up that officer's case back, and it was just like, for me, that was one of my earliest memories of all high-end watchmaking.
We decided to do an exhibition at Salon QP on world time watches, which was something I put together. I can't really remember why we picked that, but we did, and it seemed, and we were going, how are we going to get some really lovely world time watches together? And we called up Alex, and he arrived with just this incredible panoply of Andersen Genève world timers and Louis Cartier, you know, beauties and things, and made that exhibition happen, and we got to know each other. And I think ever since then, you and I have been talking to Alex and going, we want to tell this story. This story is so special. And I think we bugged him about it for a few years, and finally he said, okay, now the time is right. So last year was the 45th anniversary of Andersen Genève, and it seemed the right moment to really tell the story.
So who do you write for now, Tim? Just to give people a brief on where they can see your words.
Good point. I write long-form features for Esquire, for Wired, Financial Times, and a few other people, and I have, like everybody, a podcast called The Watch Inquiry with my great friend Chris Hall, otherwise known as The Fourth Wheel. And yeah, so you'll find me in a few of those kind of places.
I am barely doing any writing at all, mainly because I'm highly illiterate. But I'm barely doing any writing at the moment. But I've been probably around for 15 years maybe. And I remember, Tim, we first met on a trip for another brand, and I think we sat next to each other on the beach. The brand had us on the beach somewhere, and you wearing an England cricket hat, and I think that was our connection. Was a love of sport. We bonded over cricket. And anyone out there who's watched the Ashes recently, we don't have to talk about England's performance. But genuinely, the thing about Andersen Genève is, Alex has become a friend. You know, we've admired the brand and we've worked with the brand in different ways. I've worked on the digital side, you've worked on the sort of editorial side. And this has been a project, a much broader project that we've been working on for some years now. And we looked at the brand itself, we looked at the website, we looked at the social, and of course we're here on YouTube now, which is, you know, this is cool.
It's fantastic.
It's amazing because it is a brand that has not captured the wave of independent hype like other brands, but yet it's had this sort of, even those of you out there, and I'm sure many of you have visited Pierre Alexandre and Svend in the workshop in Geneva, the original workshop that the business was started in. There's just an old world charm about it, you know, be it the environment, be it the rug, the Danish rug, the famous Danish rug in the sort of
on the desk.
On the desk.
Yeah, in the boardroom, which is a corner of the office.
To the A screw logo, there's a lot of old charm to it, but yet we came into this a few years ago before the book was really sort of formulated, thinking, okay, we want to tell the story, but equally we don't want to change too much here because there's so much love for the brand.
Yeah, I think that there's kind of like top level points that people know about Andersen Genève. It was founded by Svend Andersen, and he was a great watchmaker. He also founded the AHCI, and I think Andersen Genève was always a sort of a stalwart. If you went to Baselworld back in the days and you would go to the AHCI, which is the group of independent watchmakers that would exhibit there, and Andersen Genève would always be there, but it was this sort of slightly special world, and I think that it was difficult knowing the brand beyond that. Most because a lot of these brands were, one or two person entities that didn't really know about storytelling and getting their story out. But what we realized, Justin and I, was how many stories, just how much there is within this brand, within Svend's career, and he's, truly an epochal watchmaker, and within the watches themselves, and within what Alex has done with the brand over the past decade and where it's moved to and where it's sort of on its way to. And so it was just a privilege actually to bring that together in a book and help kind of envisage how Andersen Genève should feel if it were in book form.
It's funny that we should also caveat this by saying that the brand has been gaining real momentum amongst a community of enthusiasts, and I think the big collectors out there will recognise the quality when they handle the product and when they get to meet the team, and so there has been real momentum, but it just hasn't been on that sort of big stage that we've seen from the likes of Jean maybe and Rexep and from Dufour before. But in many ways, the amazing thing about Svend and what he's done is number one, he's not, from my experience now, and actually, Tim, you should unwrap that. You should unwrap that because there's something about the joy of unwrapping a book that you just can't beat. In the day and age that we're in today, there's nothing like the smell and the feel of unwrapping a book.
If I can actually get into it.
There's something about the fact that Svend is not, intuitively not a sort of commercial businessman as such. He's a watchmaker. Yeah. He's a watchmaker, spent many years at Patek Philippe. And he was making piece uniques, bespoke watches for a lot of clients. And the business didn't have a format necessarily to it. It was a series of projects, I would say, up until the point in which Alex came into the business in 2015. Yeah. And at that point, we start to see a refinement in the product line. We've got the World Timers being the key focus. We still have Montre Tact. But we've got a clearer vision. I think in the minds of the consumer out there, prior to 2015, there was probably a little bit of confusion as to what the brand was actually offering.
Yes, I think so. I think it was unknowable because it had never really been talked about in the ways some other brands had. It's different because Svend, rather than developing his own caliber, he had developed his amazing modules that go on very high quality calibers. How does it smell?
Smell that, go on.
It smells like a book.
It smells like blood, sweat and tears.
That was the main criteria when we started thinking about what this book would be like. It wasn't just about what it would look like. It was about how it would smell. Yeah. How it would
Do you know what? It's funny you should say that, Tim, because actually this is one of the points we wanted to discuss, and it's a question that I'm sure people have out there is, why do another book? Because we are seeing a lot of books from brands. I think for you and I, and we had so many voice notes over 12 months, 24 months of planning on this, it was to produce something that was functional, something that wouldn't gather dust on the bookshelf. And God knows how many books I've got from brands that sit there and gather dust. The ones that I pulled out were the ones where, more often than not, there is a catalogue raisonné, for example, in the back, where if you own one of the watches, actually useful, like how many watches were produced, when was it launched, give us some information about those particular references. And I think, in the back here, you'll get a view as an owner of just how few watches were made. Yeah. Even just yesterday, publishing an image of a watch that's being sold at Philips. Christopher Columbus, there were questions, were the full production actually ever produced? Yeah. And this answers that.
We now have the record. Yeah.
And so it took a lot of time, it took a lot of diligence, it took a lot of flipping through archival pieces, because Svend did keep all of the project names. So anyone who's been to the atelier, he's got the books that he pulls out a lot of Piece Unique products that were never produced, are still there, as well as things that were.
It's picture albums with his photographs, taken in the 80s of these incredible watches. And that's one of the things, in the 1980s, before Andersen Genève was really a brand, it was Svend Andersen, it was him making one-off watches. He started off, there he is, with his bottle clock. So, if you go all the way back, when he moved from Denmark to Switzerland, he worked in servicing high-end watches. He invented this horological take on the ship in the bottle, the bottle clock, which made his name and gave him, he was given in the press this nickname of the watchmaker of the impossible.
And the minute he was in that story, he got a call from Patek, is that right?
Patek said, yes. Well, first he got sort of told that he wasn't going to be required anymore at the shop where he was working because he was getting too famous. And Patek decided that they liked the idea of the watchmaker of the impossible, and on the very same day, pretty much welcomed him with open arms to the atelier of Grand Complications, where he spent the next decade, so the 1970s,
with Mr. Roger Dubuis.
With Roger Dubuis. There were three of them. Henri Bernet was the third, Roger Dubuis and Svend Andersen in that atelier, both servicing watches and building some of the major complications. And so if you have a major complication from Patek from the 1970s, the chances are the hands of Svend Andersen and Roger Dubuis touched that watch. And then he set out in the 1980s on his own. Originally, he was, in fact, casing up pocket watches. And so I think that one of the things about Svend's watches is that the craft has always been as central as the mechanism. Case craft, design, beauty, all of this kind of stuff he has a very sensitive idea around that. And I think that probably came partly from this pocket watch involvement, which then grew into commissions for one-off pieces that then became commissions for wristwatches, and he made some, stupendously complicated watches in the early 1980s, back when really no one was doing this.
And for brands that people will know, from the likes of Cartier to Chopard.
The Cartier Jour et Nuit.
Jour et Nuit, look at that. That's got to live again, surely. We're pushing for that one to
live
again.
One of the coolest watches that's made. It's a jumping hour, but where it uses the jumping hour mechanism to actually jump a hand across an arc. And the jumping hours module that Svend designed then for that has then been used more recently in the beautiful jumping hour watches with jade dials and guilloche dials. But he was a maker of masterpieces back then, and then at the end of the 80s, he started making world timers. And the fascinating thing was that nobody had really been making high-end world timers since the early 1970s. So. The inventor of the world timer, Louis Cotier, made them for Patek Philippe and a few other clients. He died in 1966. The world timer sort of died out as a genre within those kind of watches. But Svend, when he was working for Patek, would work on these watches and was fascinated by the concept and by the movement, and I think by the beauty of this idea of seeing the entire world on a watch. And he began to be interested in it at the same time, and we tell this story in the book. It was the Italians. It's always the Italians.
It's always the Italians.
There were Italian collectors in the 80s who said, we want beautiful Patek-style world timers. And he produced one, and then he produced a limited series. And that became his first series-made wristwatch, the Communication, 1990. And he was the first person really to bring the world timer back into the language of watches. Over the 90s, Girard-Perregaux came into it, Ulysse Nardin, one or two others, and then it wasn't until 2000 that Patek, which had last made a world timer probably by Svend at the very start of the 70s, when they had a few Louis Cotier Ebauches left. They came back in 2000. Svend had already been doing world timers for a decade at that point.
It really is his definitive complication, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting because, as you say, he had that start around pocket watches, and you get that sense when we sat down with him and interviewed him. We had a fabulous few hours with him, and he's not a young man, and we felt very privileged that we had that time with him.
Yeah.
And that was one of the urgencies about producing this book now as well. But the sense that a lot of his early work was closed case back, so the movement finishing was never his focus. No. And we're in an era now where we're looking at finishing the whole time, and so for him it was about that intrigue of complication, I think.
Yeah.
I spoke to the team at Blancpain HQ about this particular world timer, one of one. They had never seen it before. Most of them had never seen it before.
I think until it came up for auction at Philips, not very long ago, nobody knew about it. It's there in the archives, in Svend's archives. It was the single world timer made for Blancpain.
I think it's gone to a good home because it's gone to a collector, I think, who's got hundreds of world timer watches. And it's an interesting one because it isn't the most popular, just generally speaking, not the most popular complication, but it can look very, very elegant. In many ways, it captures the romance. And we were just talking about the supersonic watch that's been produced in more recent years with the New York skyline on it.
Concorde flying across the dial
in enamel.
There it is.
And in many ways, look at it there. That takes the whole romance of a world timer and elevates it to a whole other level. Yeah. And our friend, one of our good friends, who's the editor at the FT, has said to me, without knowing any connection to us and the brand, he said, "I've got this dream watch, this Grail watch, and it's the Supersonic from Andersen Genève."
Yeah.
So
that's because he's one of the few people alive who actually still finds travel romantic.
But
the thing is that
you're telling me EasyJet trips on a weekly basis are not romantic.
But I think that's the point. The world timer is the watch of the golden age of travel. It expresses that. And Svend brought that expression back in as a purely sort of romantic thing long after that had existed. But it's a canvas for incredible craft. And the other thing that we really wanted to capture in this book is the sense of this craft that underlies what Andersen Genève does. Whether it is incredible enamel dials at the heart of a world timer, like the Concorde flying across the Chrysler building on a starry sky, the cases made by hand, the guilloche, this very special process that Andersen alone has, which is blue gold, and it's not always blue, but it's heat treating gold to a variety of iridescent shades, which they do in a little kiln in the corner of the workshop. It's that sense of handmade craft that is really at the heart of everything that they do. It's an expression of that. And
we should say, Tim, as well, one of the discoveries for me at least was the fact that Svend is he's that glue. He's very traditional in the sense that he celebrates the artisans that the brand works with. Yeah. Traditionally, watchmaking was about working with those in the region. And he does that. And as you can see with the AHCI, he is that glue for up-and-coming talent. I think he views, and this was really interesting, I think he views his role more than a maker or a brand. He views his role as a sort of a mentor for that next generation to continue to perpetuate this craft.
I think he's a bridge from what we call the golden age of wristwatches, the sort of the 50s and 60s, and of course Svend at that time working on Cotier watches when Cotier was still with us, and then into the era of the emergence of complicated luxury wristwatches post-quartz crisis, and he was so ahead of the independent watch world as we know it today. He is the godfather of that scene. He founded the AHCI, and the first people who came on board were the likes of F. Pigeon, George Daniels, and I think that he's then carried that through into the modern era. He has trained watchmakers who worked with him, Frank Muller,
Yep.
Felix Baumgartner from Urwerk, there's a few of them. So he's really brought it through. And I think what's wonderful is that now, and I'd like to think that we're helping this happen with this book, is that generations of collectors and enthusiasts who have come into this much more recently are having the opportunity to discover this work. And at the same time as Alex, with the Andersen Genève brand, is having the opportunity to take this story and build it into something for the future and take it forward.
Let's not forget about those early relationships with the likes of Anita Porcher, who designed the artist, the enamel design artist, and of course Pierre Hagman, the late Jean-Pierre Hagman. He was the first partner for Svend in all of watchmaking. I think Svend and he, started that journey of independence together.
Their work together was essential, and Hagman then worked with Frank Muller in the early days as well, as well as with so many brands. But there's a great number of watches that Hagman and Andersen did together, and that tell this story of this real craft that's at the heart of the watches.
And it's continued to this day, because in more recent times, which we cover in the book, is the journey of case making in-house at Andersen Genève.
Yeah.
And we went to Le Chaux de Fonds. So there are now 2 locations, 2 ateliers for the brand, and we saw these cases being made by hand by
Marco. So, Marco Polizzi, who I can't find the... Oh, there he is.
Marco. There he is. Look at that man. Look at that man. That's a man doing his best work on a daily basis. He's not bogged down by emails. He's not worried about WhatsApp channels or Instagram. He is making...
He's fully involved
making cases.
In making cases. Marco is the same age as Svend, and he has had his atelier in La Chaux de Fonds for 50 years. And a couple of years ago, it became part of Andersen Genève, and he is now training up a new generation of watchmakers. And so again, it's that sense of the bridge. It's the sense of the continuation of the story, of the skills, of these things that's a long way from the world of iteration and big brand and things. And I think that when we were talking about this project and how we wanted to approach it, we really said, we don't want to feel like this is one of those things where someone has come and taken this very special thing and made it into a brand and sort of branded it. It has to retain that sense of it's in some ways it's not a brand. I think of it as a practice. It's a watchmaking practice in some ways.
And we did speak to big agencies in this journey, to try and understand how we would publish this thing, because again, that's a big question that we have and colleagues of ours, have. How do you go about producing this? So this was basically done all in house. We worked with Elliot Hammer. From a creative design perspective, and he put this book together really design-wise. He's based in New York. He's British, but he works with Hodinkee. He's done a lot of the website design for Hodinkee over the years. He's just launched a watch brand actually with Mark Cho at the Armory.
Yes.
And so really he was our third partner, along with Alex, of course. But he was our third partner in the journey of making this book, which we have to give credit. And the other thing that didn't exist in the brand were images that so there was a lot of product images. Sort of pack shot images, but there were never these storytelling style images. And we're really proud to have worked with 2 wonderful photographers, both very specialist in their fields, but just bringing the brand and the people, quite frankly, to life.
I think that's the thing. So we worked with 2 wonderful photographers, both of whom I knew. So Andy Mackey, who has taken the portraiture and the workshop images, and Gary Smith, who's an exceptional still life photographer of watches that I've worked with for very many years.
That's Gary there.
And what we thought, if you ever have the chance, if you happen to have a few hours and you're in Geneva, call up Andersen Genève and drop in, because A, they'll say by all means come by, and B, you will get a sense of something special. The atelier overlooks the Rhone River in the heart of Geneva. But the thing is, one of the things I discovered is that the area of Geneva that it's in a great 1970s apartment block, or this huge brutalist building called the Quai du Sage. But that area, 150 years ago, was the heart of the scene that we call the cabinotiers, who were these people who worked in individual cabinets, garrets, making parts of watches, assembling watches, this tiny but very, very high-end cottage industry. And they were right there. And I love this idea that the cabinet of Andersen Genève is still there on that site. And one of the things we discovered, and this is, was truly incredible, the view, you get this wonderful view from the Andersen Genève workshop looking along the Rhone River into Geneva. And that very view was drawn by Turner, J.M.W. Turner, one of the greatest artists who ever lived, almost 200 years ago. And we actually have in the book Turner's drawing and the view from the balcony outside the Andersen
God, we got lucky on that
workshop.
day for the shoot, didn't we?
But it's, again, it's that sense of history's colliding.
And just
it's
over here
wonderful.
now, I think it's derelict, but this was the sort of foundry, I think. So the gold was literally just over.
Yeah, the gold was shipped over the river to the cabinotier. Yep. Yeah, the jewelry industry, the watchmaking industry came in together, and so that sense of the continuation of history is so strong. I do feel like we've tried to capture that in the book, and hopefully, if you, with the wonderful pictures by Andy and Gary, and you get a sense of, even if you can't go to Geneva, of visiting this place.
It is so honest. I think that was the line that we used the most, was how can it be more honest and more authentic? And truly honest, humble, honest, authentic, all of those things.
Yeah. There's so much, as anybody who follows watches will know, there's so much luxury bullshit in the watch world.
Can we keep that? I'm sure we will.
Keep it. Because no one will disagree with that.
True.
There is so much luxury bullshit in the watch world. And what I love the most about Andersen Genève is that it is a brand in which bullshit doesn't play any role. Yeah. It's honest, it's humble, and it's very, very beautiful.
If you're interested in getting this book, it's not going to set you back $650 US plus shipping. It's available through the DMs on the Andersen Genève Instagram. Alex will no doubt hate us for sharing that publicly, but please do get in touch, because as Tim says, as welcoming as the team are on the ground, the team and Alex, who look after the Instagram, are as welcoming. So please do get in touch. I'm not sure how many copies there are left, but it's not a commercial venture. And I think that goes even further to touch on the points you've raised, Tim, about the realities of the honesty and the authenticity of it. This is not a commercial thing. But really, the two anniversaries, Alex's anniversary and the brand anniversary, just felt like it was the right time. Is there a favourite image you've got in the book? And is there a little nugget of a sort of an insight maybe that you thought was something that you would like to share that was unexpected in the journey of putting it together? Well,
so on the favourite image, I'm going to actually go back, if I can find it again, to the image of Marco Palozzi. I beg your pardon. Is it the
one of him?
Here it is,
holding his case.
No, it's that one we were just looking at.
With the face.
With the face.
Yeah.
Maybe we can cut into that. But the image of Marco at work is such a soulful image, and in fact, Andy got so many images from that shoot, and we could only use a couple of them. But it was wonderful.
I thought you were going to say the one that did make the book, which was the case, the rough case,
in his hand,
the block, the sort of monoblock case itself, and you see the hand which is so aged, and it goes to tell everything we wanted to tell in that singular image. When we saw that, and you weren't actually there on that day, but I was sending you shots back home, and I think you saw that, and you're like, that's the image that sums up this whole project.
Yeah, it's true.
There's another image of Svend, which again didn't make it into the book, but there's an image of him holding up a broom and adjusting the clock in the atelier by moving the hand with this clock, and that image I just thought was absolutely fantastic.
Also Papa Svend.
Papa Svend on the back of his
Svend's white coat, workshop coat, just says Papa Svend on the back of it.
Which did make it into the book.
That did make it into the book.
I'm going to share this one because, and I have captured this one just while we're flicking through, but this is of Liana, a watchmaker, Le Chaux de Fonds. Here she actually is in Geneva. But this, for me, just absolutely blew my socks off, because there are so many young watchmakers within the brand who, again, are going through this amazing tutelage. Who each and every one have this amazing style. The boys have this sort of vintage style that they could be from a Pierre Cardin advert in the 80s vibe going on. But she just looks so comfortable and at ease here. I don't know how we managed to get this shot.
So Andy's a very good photographer.
Andy got the shot.
Actually, as I remember, as Andy said, like in some ways, you go in that workshop, these pictures take themselves. It's that kind of a space. The other thing I'm going to share that was a fascinating discovery, actually, because I really didn't know much about this, was this story. So before Svend, really before he fully went solo, and quite a while before he was central alongside Vincent Calabrese in setting up the AHCI, he set up something called Le Groupement des Cabinotiers, which was a proto-AHCI, an organization of independent watchmakers and craftspeople who came together on a project. And the project was to make an incredible pocket watch, in fact, a series of pocket watches. And we've got that in here. We've got you can see the people who were involved, which I think included Roger Dubuis and various other craftspeople. And they made this incredible pocket watch, which is now in the Bayer Museum in Zurich. And then, as inevitably does happen sometimes with these kind of things, it sort of fell apart through creative differences.
This was an Opus project before its time.
It absolutely was.
A Harry Winston Opus project.
Yeah.
I have to say, for me, the one thing that really struck me was the Italian link, because this day and age, we know that Andersen has a huge collecting community in Europe, Germany, and Switzerland, but also in Japan. There's a huge following in Japan. Yeah. But what really struck me was the Lavazza family, the story of the Lavazza family, which kept coming back for more and more. Yeah. They wanted more and more piece uniques.
It was in Turin. There was this scene of Italian sort of bon viveurs and aesthetes around, linked to...
Agnelli was in there.
Yeah, the Agnellis was there, the Lavazza family, and in particular the Pininfarina people involved with Pininfarina, the coach builder. And they were early into this incredible watchmaker who was doing these kind of things. And the image that we had from Svend was, he would go to St. Moritz and hang out with these people there, and avuncular Svend with these incredible Italian sort of power players and aesthetes and sprezzatura specialists, and of course, but they were the ones who wanted these wild-timers, and that interaction is at the heart of it, and I think we have them in some ways to thank for the fact that this became a brand. It became an operation of series produced watches, and it brought the world timer back into watchmaking as well.
In many ways, it is the definition of the ultimate luxury. Yeah. To get to know the maker, to get to understand their impulse, because actually it's taken us time to get to really know the brand and understand it. And I still think there's more to unearth and more to uncover. As we talk about so much, you've got so much more to share. But it's just, the idea of getting hands-on with the makers, getting to know them. In this day and age, it's the ultimate.
But that's what they still do. The customization and bespoke work is still a very big part. Yeah. Of what Andersen now is doing. We're often, talking to Alex, and he'll suddenly sort of pull something out. Oh yeah, we've just made this, and wow, that's that. We didn't hear about that. That's a fantastic project. And all of the and of course now we've the world's first split-second world timer, which is in the book. Is that sort of the next level that things are going along? Yeah, there's a kind of momentum and a direction. And I think we've expressed that a bit.
Tim Boy, thank you so much. It's been truly a pleasure. I've said this to you privately, but truly, we've worked on a few things over the years, but nothing quite like this.
No.
And you really did spearhead this. I was supporting this, but you really did spearhead it. And there were moments where it looked because of timelines, as always, and constraints, it didn't look like it would happen. But
these projects never run smoothly.
and if it didn't have that, it wouldn't be worth it.
It turned out that we were quite good at sort of pulling each other along through it. And
I think there were moments where at least I felt like, you know, we needed each other to lift each other up to sort of say, hey, look, we can make this happen. I'm going to just work on this and we're going to try and make this happen. So we really did come together, and I so enjoyed working with you on it.
We had a very patient designer in New York and a very patient client in Geneva. But it was
we'll see you in the comments, Elliot and Alex.
But it's been, you know, it's been a really special thing to work on. It's a very special brand. I think that it's a book that is different to, I mean, you and I, we sat down with architecture books.
Yes,
when
we did.
we were
Yes, we did.
We sat down in Waterstones with a massive pile of books going,
Yes.
what do we want this to be like?
Yep.
Not like other watch books.
And I mean, it's got a different feel to it, but it is absolutely based on those architectural books from,
It was Richard Neutra.
It was Neutra, wasn't it? It was Neutra. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
No, Tim, thank you so much. Truly one of the things that I'm most proud of in all my years.
Likewise.
So, guys, thank you for joining us. And we won't bore you for too much longer, but just gives you a few insights into the journey. For anyone out there that's actually got one or read it, please let us know your thoughts below. We will absolutely respond to them. And thank you for the support. And we're really excited, genuinely excited to see where the brand goes in the next 45 years.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting things happening throughout that timeline.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks.